Rockwell, thank you so much for coming on the show. Means a lot to have you here. You're working on a really interesting problem, a very significant problem, actually, trying to solve how to get better sleep, which is a big deal. Tell us about how you got to become the CEO of Oswell Sleep.
Man, that's such a crazy story. So, what feels like a lifetime ago at this point, I graduated from Cornell in economics, and then I was a very lowly remote tech support agent for a company called For Patient Care. It was a medical software company. And I was literally remoting into doctors' computers, fixing their software. And I did that for years. Slowly but surely, worked my way up the corporate ladder and became president of that company and grew it, scaled it. It was eventually acquired by Essilor. And after that, launched into the consumer app arena. So one of the things that kind of sucked about being in B2B medical SaaS is nobody ever says thank you. Like doctors never call you and they're like, oh, thank you so much for optimizing my revenue. But one of the great things about working in consumer is that people say thank you almost every day. Like every day somebody's like, oh, you changed my life, or you really helped me with this. And that feeling, that like feedback that you get and that feedback loop is a lot more fulfilling. And so we launched a suite of apps that help people with sleep and anxiety, depression, chronic pain. And we actually had a contract running with Bose where we were producing audio for a device called the Bose Sleep Buds. And
Really?
yes, I have them here. So these are the Bose Sleep Buds. They're these tiny little earbuds that play audio, that help you sleep, help block out noise. And you know what, we like to joke around that it takes a company the size of Bose to make earbuds that don't stream audio. They don't stream any audio. Like you can't listen to an audiobook or a podcast. They are fancy earplugs with white noise is effectively what they do. Right.
That's
And
so cool.
you know, it was great. Like they sold a bunch. They were Oprah's favorite thing twice. They were Time Magazine's best invention award. Like they really had quite a following. And we had a contract producing audio for them. And one day I get a phone call that from Bose, and they're like, hey, Rock, some bad news for you. We're cutting the Sleep Buds. In fact, we're cutting our entire health division at Bose. And so Bose had a reorg, and you know, long story short, a number of divisions got cut. Health was one of them. And that meant the Sleep Buds hit the scrap pile. And so there were a number of us that were like, wait a second, what if we could revive this? Like, what if we could actually acquire the IP from Bose, you know, redevelop the product, add streaming, add a bunch of features that people wanted, and relaunch it to the world? What would that look like? And so that is a lot of the kind of like of the long story, very short. You know, this product first had life under Bose. We saw its potential. When it was shut down, we acquired that IP, raised capital, re-engineered the product, and relaunched it. And you know, I was a longtime advisor to the company. I was an advisor to the company even before it was a company. It was started by 3 Bose engineers that left Bose and decided to do this. I came on as CEO last year to kind of help grow and scale and commercialize the business. But you know, there's so many interesting, exciting things about this product. But I have to ask you the question, Clint. It's the most important question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sleep next to anybody who snores, or have ever?
I don't, but I think, but here's the thing. I think I'm that person. I think I'm the person that snores.
So
I actually think I'm the snorer. I'm the problem.
Yeah, you're the problem. So you might buy this for your partner.
Yeah.
So the number one reason that people buy Sleep Buds is they have a snoring bed partner. Number 2 reason is because there's like noise outside of the house, like they live in New York City or a loud cityscape. Number 3 reason is like noise inside of the house, like the kids are running around, or you know, there's their neighbors are noisy or whatever. And then the 4th reason, which is really interesting, and it actually is that, you know, the younger you get, the more popular this reason is. And it's just a fundamental shift in how people are consuming information and experiences around sleep. Is people want to listen to audio close to bedtime, like either as their sleep routine or while they're sleeping. Right? And if you've ever tried to use AirPods are not comfortable to sleep in, right?
Well, they're going to fall out, right? Yeah. They'll fall out. There's a million problems.
Well, yeah. And if you're side sleeping, it's not comfortable. Like you can see it, it's popping out of my ear right now, like hard plastic, definitely not comfortable side sleeping. if I take, so these are the Ozlo Sleep Buds. So if I take this out, I'll take the AirPod and put the Sleep Bud in, you'll see it sits flush right in my ear, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm looking at you, you could see the AirPod, you can't see the Sleep Bud. There's no pain or like discomfort if you're side sleeping. It forms a really strong seal in the ear, so it blocks out noise really effectively. And if I take this out, these little tips are squishy. And there's 4 different sizes of them, so like they can fit effectively every ear. And if I take the squishy tip size out, you can see that like a size comparison
Oh
between the
yeah.
AirPod and the Sleep Bud, right? Like there's quite a big difference in size. There's a lot of engineering that goes in to making something this small and this capable. So it really does take a world-class engineering team. In fact, 70% of our staff actually comes from Bose. so
That's
so
awesome.
lots of incredible engineers. But yeah,
That's
that's kind of like the short story of Sleepbuds.
so how is it doing? Like since you've relaunched it, how's it going?
I mean, it's been like the traction has been phenomenal. So we are now the number one Indiegogo pre-order campaign of all time. So we have just crushed it on that front. We have around 30,000 pre-orders, most of which we have already delivered. We've done around $6.8 million in pre-orders already. We'll have our big, consumer general availability launch a little bit later this year, but the traction has been crazy. Like we have just been, it's pretty wild to be almost profitable as a company before you actually launch like a general consumer product.
That is kind of wild. Yeah,
Yeah.
let me ask you a few questions about crowdfunding. I'm super interested in it, and it seems like it's a great way for consumer product companies to test whether or not they have a product that consumers are going to want.
Yeah.
Whether there's even a market for it, whether people are, like you said, like I mean, you have the highest one ever on Indiegogo. Like whether people are even going to like open their pocketbooks right then for something that they might not get for 6 months to a year or something like that. I'm not sure what the regular time frame is. What advantages have you seen from being on Indiegogo and going the crowdfunding route?
Oh my gosh, immense advantages, especially when you think about the backdrop of consumer tech launches that have happened more recently. So in tech, we've had a string of very high profile failures. So think about the Humane AI pin, the
Oh
Fisker
yeah,
Ocean, the Rabbit R1. Like when tech reviewers get this stuff, they basically say, what is this? This is like fake it till you make it. Like this product barely even functions or works on any dimension. How could they possibly ship this thing? And so when you're dealing with hardware, it's very hard to go on a journey to iterate on hardware and get it ready before it's into its production launch. But going the crowdfunding route with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, it gives you a pathway to get that early audience who understands, hey, like this is not a fully baked product. You're coming on a journey with me to make this thing, and you're going to be part of this experience. You're going to be part of the journey of bringing it to life. And while that journey isn't great for every consumer, for a certain section of the market, they thrive on it. They love it because they're like, wow, I got to contribute. Like I got to be part of this thing and make it a reality. And it's something a lot of those folks are really proud of. So that when they look at their device, it's like, hey, I'll give you a discount. You pre-ordered this device. You're going to get it first. It's going to have bugs, going to have kinks, but you're going to work it out with me. And by the
yeah,
end of it, we'll have a fully production ready device. And this is a godsend, because startups don't have the budget of an Apple or a Bose or a Microsoft, where it's like, oh, you basically effectively have infinite money behind you. We don't have infinite money, right? We have real constraints. And so we don't have the ability to just kind of sit here for years tinkering and iterating on it, trying to get it perfect. Like we have to do all of that publicly. And sometimes like it's painful, right? It's like, oh, we launched an update and it didn't work out as well as we hoped, or it's like, oh, we found this bug that is causing some issues in the field. But that's part of the process, right? Like
yeah,
that's part of the iteration process. I think one thing that a lot of consumers don't understand about the crowdfunding process is that number that you see that people raise on crowdfunding is not how much money it takes to bring something to market. So
Mhm.
for us, if you go on our Indiegogo page or our Kickstarter page, you'll see that we've done $6.8 million of sales. But we're a venture-backed company. We had to go raise $22 million to go make this device a reality. Like we couldn't have just done it with the money that came from crowdfunding. What crowdfunding effectively was a pre-order campaign
Mm-hmm.
where we're actually judging demand of like, okay, do people want this thing? How much do they want it? Like, what are the dimensions of that demand curve? And so crowdfunding gives you a much better chance selling that up front and getting a really group of passionate people behind the product that will help you bring it to life.
What went into your decision to be on both Kickstarter and Indiegogo? Is that normal? Is that like the thing that a lot of people do?
Yeah, so these days Kickstarter and Indiegogo work really well together. So I
Oh,
think
okay.
maybe in the early times people thought of them as competing platforms,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the playbook today is that you launch on Kickstarter, and Kickstarter is a defined window of time. It has a beginning and an end, right? And then once you're done with Kickstarter, you actually transition to Indiegogo's pre-order campaign platform that they call the in-demand platform, so that you can continue to take pre-orders and continue to generate sales, and that can go as long as you want until you're ready for general availability.
Oh, I had no idea. Yeah, I was still thinking of them as like the competing platforms. That's actually
Yeah,
really
yeah,
cool.
it's super handy. And they actually, if you go to our Kickstarter page, they work together, they integrate together. It will say on for example Indiegogo, it will say how much money was raised from Kickstarter, another platform, right? And you can go between them. And if you go to Kickstarter, it will actually forward you to Indiegogo.
That's so cool. I love
Yeah,
that. That's actually
yeah.
great for up and coming entrepreneurs. Hey, on the hardware piece and how hard it is, how do you go about building an earbud, sorry. This isn't something that anybody can just do and tinker with in their garage. Like, how do you actually
No,
do this?
extremely complicated. It really, when you're talking about a device like Sleepbuds, the smaller that you build something, the harder that it is, really and truly, to create. So we stand on the shoulder of giants. Bose put in a lot of money into R&D, building the form factor, building the buds, like the tips, the case. There's a lot of R&D development that they did there. And, I think it's important to recognize we didn't start from scratch.
Yeah.
But it's also important to recognize that 95% of this device is different. So while, if I bring the Bose and the Oslo cases, like, okay, they look similar, right? Like, and
Mhm.
if I open them, they look very similar. You would not necessarily guess that 95% of this device is different. And, that requires a truly world-class engineering team to make happen. So we have incredible masters of their craft, from mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, system architecture, firmware, software, every aspect of it, that bring the device to life. It's a very time intensive, resource intensive process. And unlike software, there's the margin for mistakes, right? Because
Yeah.
God
Oh, yeah.
forbid you ship out a bunch of units and there's a hardware problem and you have to recall them, you might not survive as a startup, right? So
Yeah.
hardware is incredibly risky from that end.
Yeah. So, but you've also got to do software too, right? Like, it's not like you
Yeah.
could escape that piece.
Yeah, no. So we have to do hardware, we have to do firmware, we have to do software because we have iOS, Android web apps. We also have to do content. So we design noise masking tracks that are very specifically and specially designed to block out noise, especially snoring. And so,
Mhm.
this is not your grandma's white noise. This is
Yeah.
not like white noise, pink noise, green. All that is great, but when you're designing tracks specifically for noise masking, there's a target curve and there are dynamics that you're trying to hit in those tracks that's just very different, right? So
Yeah.
full stack, from a hardware, software, firmware, content, we do everything in-house.
And like the actual manufacturing of it,
Mm-hmm.
like how does that work? Like if somebody like wanted, and not if somebody wanted to do the earbuds, but if somebody wants to manufacture something, I just want our audience to understand like the difficulty of this, although it may seem easier than it is. Just the difficulty of trying to mass manufacture a
Yeah.
product. Like what all does it go into? Like, do you have to go to China? You got to go out of the United States. I assume there's all sorts of things that go into this.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Oh, you triggered me to think of like, oh, where do I even start with like a topic so big? So we have a member on our team who has 30 years in the manufacturing stack. He is like an incredible mind in the hardware stack. She speaks both Chinese and English. She has worked for many companies that you would know their name, including Bose. She has produced many millions of dollars worth of product in her career. Without her, it would have been next to impossible to try to make a device like this, because inside of the Sleep Buds, there's over 370 parts. You're talking about, you have to set up a supply chain of over 370 parts. And if any one of those parts is not there, you don't get to build the device, right? So you're talking about a very intense logistical task. Even on the supply chain angle, like who are these suppliers that are gonna provide these materials? Like where can you get them? You have to negotiate with them. You have to build that entire pipeline. For your manufacturer, there's all, like, you have to set up the production line, all the equipment that you have to do, the training. Like, people don't realize, if I showed you a video of our production line, you would think that we were building Rolls Royces, like, with the amount of human touch points there are in building the product. It's like mind boggling when you first see it. You're like, I can't believe there's that many human beings involved with creating a device this big. So you have to train all of those workers on how to do it. There's when you're talking about the actual creation process of the device, right? So you have to go through the prototyping stage. Once you get to the prototyping stage, you have a DV build, then a PV build, then a PQ build. Like, in each one of these phases, you are iterating on the hardware to get it more and more ready for mainstream mass production. And at every single point in the process, there will be problems. I assure you, there will be some problem that happens where you're like, oh no, we have to go back to the drawing board and do this thing over again, or this thing over again. And from our own story, we have a number of chip suppliers. One of our chip suppliers, once we were functionally done with the device, we were ready to start gearing up manufacturing. They came to us and they said, hey guys, sorry, but turns out the chip that you're using in your device that's really important to the functioning of it, we're actually going to stop supporting that. So if you could just move to our newer chip, that would be great. Imagine you did all of this work, get to this point where you could start shipping this device out to people, and they tell you at the last minute, no, actually you have to switch to a newer chip, and all of the like cascading headaches that are caused from that, right? Which there are many cascading headaches that happen, including having to rewrite all of your firmware, right? So yeah, I mean, we have so many war stories at this point of obstacles that we've had to overcome in order to get the product to where it is today. And we're not even done yet, right? Like, we're still in the pre-order phase. General availability launch is still a couple months away. There's still more for us to do, but the journey that we have been on in delivering the first 30,000 devices to the field, I can't even imagine people that are walking into it that don't have robust hardware experience. Like, we have, at this point, we're a team of 40 people. There's an immense amount of experience on the team across every part of the stack. And, I just feel so bad for those folks that, they're like, hey, I really want this thing to exist. I'm going to go on crowdfunding. I'm going to go raise money. I'm going to go work with manufacturers and make it happen. There's a reason why the failure rate of crowdfunding is so high, especially for hardware. It's an extremely complicated process.
What's the one element or part that's the hardest?
Everything.
Is it chips?
I mean,
let me ask that a different way. Like, what's an element or part that is the hardest to get? Like, when there's a supply chain issue, it's going to cause major problems.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. When you ask the question of what part is the hardest, certainly, like, supply chain can be difficult in times when there's low supply, or there's so for example, we had a supplier who was hit with a cybersecurity attack that shut down their production for 30 days plus or minus, right? That means we're shut down. It's like there's not, like, there's only so much that we can do without that supply, right? How do you predict a cybersecurity attack on one of your suppliers? Like, you can't possibly know that's going to happen, right? So that stuff is not hard in the sense that it's difficult to overcome. It's just hard because when it happens, it disrupts operations, and it's like you have to have you have to figure some way out, some other way. It's like, can I find another supplier? Can I be first in line for the first shipments that are coming out of that supplier when they're operational again? Like there's so many things that you have to kind of try, but that's not hard in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
Hard in the traditional sense would be we operate at the edge of the frontier of this hardware's capability. Like many of the things that we're using in Sleepbuds are exciting. They're new technologies. Like for example, we're using Bluetooth low energy as our streaming standard. Now, most phones do not support Bluetooth low energy audio streaming. So we have to stream from the phone to the case and then the case. And that that really hasn't been done before, especially on the kind of hardware that we're doing it on. And so it's extremely exciting. It's very technically challenging, and pulling it off means that you get these like tiny little sleep buds that have 10 hours of battery life and could do biometric sensing and environmental sensing. And they have all these cool superpowers, but it's hard, right? Like you don't get that stuff for free. Like you have to build it. So that's where I would say the hardest part about this is operating at the edge of the frontier, because you are the one laying the ground. You can't go on like Stack Overflow and be like, hey, another engineer has solved this problem before. How do I solve this problem? You have to invent the way, right? And whenever you're the one inventing the way, that is classically hard to me.
What are you seeing from customers? Are they listening to audiobooks, podcasts, the noises? Like what's kind of seems to be the most popular?
So we have two classes of individuals right now. There's the first class of individual where they don't care about streaming, they just care about noise masking. And so one of the cool superpowers that Sleepbuds have is that you can turn them into Bluetooth off mode. So all the Bluetooth radios shut off, and then it just locally plays back your sleep sound. For a lot of folks, especially if they were coming from the Bose Sleepbuds 1 or the Bose Sleepbuds 2, they care about that more than anything, because that's how they're using this product. They're using it as an earplug that plays white noise. That customer, is about, I want to say like half of the population. The other half are brand new to Sleepbuds. They were never a Bose customer. They have no reference point to that. And for those people, streaming is really important. So they'll listen to podcasts, they'll listen to audiobooks, they'll even listen to YouTube videos. Now, for privacy reasons, we don't collect what people are listening to. So I can't tell you like 30% of people are listening to Audible or something. Like, there's a privacy layer between us and the customer. But just from what people write about online and what they talk about and user interviews, it's pretty clear, like, there's a lot of audiobooks, there's a lot of podcasts, and there's some YouTube videos.
What does a typical day look like for you?
I go through different seasons of my life, and this is a very, very busy season of my life. My son was born about a year ago, little baby Cyrus.
Congrats.
Thank you. So it's my firstborn, so I'm going through fatherhood for the first time. It's really interesting. When I was a kid, people always told me, I was like indoctrinated that children are a hardship. This is what I was told over and over again. It's like, children are a hardship, like put off having kids for as long as possible. Yes, in becoming a father, like kids, there are hard parts, but nobody ever talks about like the joy, especially guys. Like they don't talk about the joy of fatherhood. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe it's my personal experience, but
no, far and away, my favorite thing in life is being a dad. How is it not? It's the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So about half the days of the week, I wake up at 5:30 a.m. because that's when he wakes up. So I wake up, I go like greet him in his room, like, I just spend from like 5:30 to 7 a.m. with him. At 7 a.m., our wonderful nanny comes in, takes over, and then I just go straight to work. So I usually work from about 7 a.m. straight till about 5:30 p.m. And then 5:30, I cut off. I go have dinner with Cyrus and my wife, spend a little bit of family time together. And then at night, sometimes I will go work out, exercise. Like I love playing tennis. I love playing pickleball. Those are my sports. If anybody's around to play table tennis, I will play some ping pong with them too. Anything with a racket that's not badminton, I'm down. You'll find me playing. And then, sometimes I'll get work done if I have, a lot of stuff to do. Like Monday through Friday, that very much is the way that I work. I don't do I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, I wake up and then I do 60 minutes of meditation and then I do a cold plunge and then I hang upside down for, it's like, I don't do that stuff. I'm most productive in the morning. And so I know I'm like, all right, get at it, like get to work, get stuff done. And yeah.
What are you reading? What do you read?
I these days, the way that I structure my information consumption, like books are amazing. Don't get me wrong. Books are incredible. The one part about books that I have a beef with is that oftentimes like the first 100 pages of a book is talking about why you should read the book effectively.
Don't you
It's
hate
like,
that? I agree with
yeah,
you entirely on that.
yeah.
It's like, I
So
am reading the book right now. You don't need to convince me. I have the book in my hand.
I I literally there was a podcast that I was listening to, and the author of the book Unstoppable was on this podcast, and I was listening to him talk about it. I was like, oh man, my wife would love this book. She should totally read it. So I texted it to my wife, and like when she finally got it to around to reading it, she texted me. She's like, when is he gonna stop talking about like how bad anxiety is? Like, I know how bad anxiety is. That's why I'm reading this book. I want the techniques already. Like, tell me how to overcome the anxiety. So generally these days I skip most books. The way that I do information consumption, I have a number of online sources that are long form. Like I love long form. I spend a lot more time with long form. That long form could either come in text, could be white papers, it could be listening to podcasts or YouTube videos that are long form. The way I usually do it is I try to find someone who is the best or close to the best in their industry, and I listen to them talk for a few hours. Because when you listen to somebody who's elite speak about this thing that they're elite at, they will drop all of these nuggets of information everywhere for you, things that you would have never even dreamt of, things that you won't get from reading like the pop sci version in like a New York Times bestseller or something, right? Because those are the things that help make them great. And so what I'll do is after a while listening to them, I'll go investigate those sources that they talked about. Right? It could be papers, it could be scientific journals, it could be books, whatever it is. Like I'll go and read those things with a first person perspective. I can't tell you like how crazy it is to me that people don't go read the source material. Just go read the source material. Whatever it is you're interested in, just go read it. Like actually read it, not filtered by somebody else's perspective of what that source material is. Like it will be like life changing to you to go read the source material. I remember, in one of the phases of my life, I got very heavily interested in cryptography, in cryptocurrencies, and various. If I said go read the Bitcoin white paper, people would think I'm saying, oh, you're going to go read an encyclopedia of 1,000 pages or something. The Bitcoin white paper is 9 pages long. Right? Like, just go read the source material. Like, it's not that crazy, right? People fight all the time over things like the Second Amendment. How many people fight over the Second Amendment have never read the Second Amendment? Right? Regardless of what side you're on, it doesn't matter. Just like go actually read it, right? And so, I'm a huge fan of reading the source material and kind of coming to my own conclusions.
What is the state of e-commerce and consumer products right now, given the state of the economy, kind of the kind of fluctuations in the market, to put it mildly, like the uncertainty given elections, both in the United States and throughout the country, throughout the world? What do you think? Like, what are we looking at here from an economic perspective? I'm sure you're thinking about that a lot as you prepare to launch.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. So when you think about the macroeconomic cycle, it's very easy to fall into the bear trap of gloom and doom. It's like, oh, the sky is falling, the world is falling apart, it's horrible, it's this or that. I mean, we've lived through even more recently in 2020. We had a very strong recession in 2020, and everybody thought the sky was falling. And then on the backs of that, you had a huge economic boom at the tail end of 2020 and 2021, which is like huge, like incredible economic boom at that time. And then, the second half of 2022, things came back down and deflated a bit, and valuations got within the realm of closer to reasonable. And so you have to be really careful. There's a saying I really like: optimists get rich, pessimists get right. And so if you're like constantly worried about what the future holds, and you're trying to time the markets, or you're trying to worry too much about how consumer demand will be affected by macroeconomic conditions, you fail to realize that 60% of the S&P 500 was created during recessionary periods, right? Like most of the time, it's in times of economic turmoil that there is great advantage and there's great opportunity. And so those are often the times where you want to like seize the moment and really go after it quite hard. And so from a macroeconomic perspective, does it look like we're like going into a recession right now? It's like, yes, like a lot of the indicators would be pointing is like, okay, there's trouble, quote unquote, trouble on the horizon. Will that have some effects on e-commerce? Are those effects strong enough that it should kill like promising companies that have strong product market fit of devices and services that people really want? No. It should be, it should be fine. All if anything, it becomes easier in some dimensions because competitors fall away. The people that were raised a bunch of money but didn't have really good unit economics and didn't really understand their business really well, didn't have strong product market fit, those guys go away. Marketing budgets shrink a little bit, so it gives a chance for startups like us to compete against people that have much bigger war chests than we do. I don't worry too much about the macroeconomic cycle in regards to our particular company. I think we're pretty strongly positioned because of how deep the product market fit is. Like people really want this device, and if you suffer from a sleeping problem and you need this, you'll jump over all sorts of hoops to figure out how to buy this device. Yeah. So I think it's a less of a concern for us.
I could talk to you forever, but we end every interview the exact same way with the exact same question. That is, at CEO.com, we believe the chances one gives is just as important as the chances one takes. When you hear that, who gave you a chance to get you to where you are today?
Oh my gosh, so many people. This is a very laundry list. Mr. Shockett, who was my history teacher, who sent me to Boise State in Nevada. That was like at 18 years old. That was a transformational experience. The guy who interviewed me to get into Cornell, I literally only ever met him once. Apparently left such an impression that when I arrived to Cornell, he had bought a sweater and a blanket and a vodka shot glass. And like he had left it as a package for me in my dorm room on my first day. And I swear to you, he was a decent portion of the reason that I got in, because I think he gave like a really like powerful testimonial for me. The first folks that in for patient care that took a shot on me when I was in my early 20s, young and up and coming kid who wanted to make his waves in the startup scene. I grew in that company relatively quickly, and these were all guys that were in their 40s, 50s, 60s who handed over their company to a 20-something-year-old to say like, hey, we took it as far as we can go. You take it. You see how fast you can grow it. The people that bet on me when I went to go start my app company, there was a number of those folks that cut checks to build that company. And even with Ozlo, the founders of Ozlo, the employees of Ozlo, the venture investors of Ozlo, the stakeholders of Ozlo, when I came in as CEO, they put a bet on me to say, hey, this guy can take us to the next level. Let's bring him on board. You don't do this alone, right? It takes quite literally a village, not just in a single time and place, but across your life. The realities and the dreams come to fruition. And so I have many, many thank yous to many, many people. And I know there's so many people that I have left out. Like my family, my friends, my mother, my best friend, it's like, I could go on and on of all the people. My wife, it's like how many thank yous do I owe to her? My sister, like so many people took a bet on me and believed in me and pushed me. And I came from very humble beginnings. My mother and father are both from Iran. They're immigrants. They came to this country with nothing. I grew up, very much on the poor end of the spectrum, and had to figure out ways my own life and make my own way. You just don't do that. Like, don't pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, I think it is true that the more you help yourself, other people will be willing to help you. And there's a really important lesson in that. It's a myth that you do it alone. You have a whole village.
Rockwell, thank you so much. Seriously, what an honor to have you on here. Good luck on the launch of everything over the next few months. I'm sure we'll have you back on to discuss how it went. Appreciate you coming on.
Clint, thanks so much. It's a pleasure.